Hello everyone, this is a quick tutorial for the new Boolean Bevel modifier. So the thing this modifier or node group is trying to address is beveling booleans. So let's add a UV sphere, for example, and maybe a cylinder. And when you try to bevel something like this, you try to Boolean them first. So let's add a Boolean modifier here. For example, let's union these two. And then let's hide the sphere. Oh, we made a Boolean difference. Let's go for a union for now. And let's make the sphere a little smaller. Okay. Apply the scale. Hide it again. So now we have these two objects union to each other. If we need to bevel this, so if we add a bevel modifier so we can bevel these edges, you see nothing is happening because clamp overlap is enabled. If we disable clamped overlap, we get this mess right here at the intersecting edges. So that just doesn't work. So let's use the new add-on. You can append. This is the file. So you go to the file, node tree, and you can either append the modifier or the node. Let's start with the modifier. Let's add a geometry nodes modifier here and choose Boolean and Bevel. And for the objects, we can choose the sphere. So now they're Boolean together, and you have this perfect shade auto smooth right here. Ignore sharpness. And now you have this really nice bevel Boolean between the two objects. And if you go to wireframe mode, you can see that there you have this beveled cut around both objects. You can increase cut radius, and it will still work. You can control the spacing, so widen the spacing or reduce the spacing, get more resolution. And you also have the option to not bevel the offset cut, but instead output a bevel weight, which you can then use in a bevel modifier further down the stack. So if you go to the bevel here, limit method to weight, and then you can increase the bevel, you can increase the segments, and it will get the same result. That's if you prefer to use the native bevel modifier. Let's set this back for now. Of course, you can also increase or decrease the bevel segments. And then you have the option to do a Boolean cleanup. Maybe this wouldn't be the best idea for the cylinder here, but say, for example, that we add a couple of loop cuts here. Okay. And then if you do a Boolean cleanup, then it'll snap all these edges to the closest vertices on the cut so that it can get rid of any shading errors and make your mesh manifold. This is the merge distance for the Boolean cleanup. You typically want a large distance so you can snap to the nearest edge, but if you don't want to snap all the edges, you can start reducing this distance, and only the edges really close to the vertices will be snapped. When we start increasing this distance, then more and more edges will start snapping. You can leave it at the default 0.5 if you want. This bevel width setting, you can leave it on auto, which uses the entire cut radius as the bevel width, or you can specify a manual width by setting it to manual and setting the bevel width to your liking. Let's now look at the node. So what this modifier does is just use the node behind the scenes. And for the node, you have the exact same settings. We can expose them. You have the bevel radius, the cut radius. You have this epsilon parameter is used if you get any funny issues, vertices on the edge not getting picked up, just like defects here. You can increase the epsilon just a little bit so that these vertices get picked up. You have the spacing, you have the option not to bevel, same options as in the modifier panel, with the addition that they outputs some selection groups that are useful. For example, we get a viewer node here and output this This is the selection for the beveled edges, which you can use in your geometry nodes workflow to, for example, separate this or do any other operations on it. And you've got this factor, which fades from the center, from 1 at the center to 0 at the edges. And this is useful to, for example, maybe blend between the materials of both meshes. So you can output them right here, give it a name, and then use that later in your shader to blend between those two materials. The node itself can be used to bevel any continuous edge loop, so it doesn't have to be a Boolean, which we have right here in the example included with the node file. So this here is the variable bevel width example from these screenshots. And you see here I'm using a selection to select only the upper rim edges. So I'm selecting first the faces, where the dot product of the normal is aligned with the z-axis. So I'm selecting the faces that look up. And then I'm also selecting the faces where the angle is equal to half pi or 90 degrees. So these rim edges. And then I'm doing a Boolean of these two selections to get just, and evaluating them on the domain just to get, the edges on the rim. And then I just bevel those edges. And then I'm using a noise texture as the cut radius so that I have a variable bevel width along these edges. You can use vertex groups if you want, or you can do them procedurally like I did here, it doesn't matter. You need to set the bevel width to auto here, so that the bevel width will match the cut radius. So that's it, and I hope you enjoy using the modifier.